Hi my friends, welcome to the Baker Pippo YouTube channel. This is another episode of Women's Soccer World where we talk all about the glorious news of women's soccer and all the fun things happening within it. I'm Bryce, and today we're going to talk about three different topics coming at you. We're going to talk about the conclusion of the send-off series, that's right, Game 2 of the USWNT national team versus Mexico, and what that all means heading into the Olympics. Next, we're going to talk about the IOC, that is the International Olympic Committee. If I have that right, I'll put a picture up there for you guys, but in their decision to expand the the women's soccer rosters from 18 to 22 players. And then last thing we're going to talk about is Manchester United approaching the PFA for help at their current situation with the club. So without further ado, let's get it started. All right, friends, to kick off this episode, we're going to talk about the conclusion of the send-off series for the United States women's national team. They took on Mexico the day after the 4th of July, which, as you guessed, is the 5th of July. And it ended in a much drier game weather-wise and a 4-0 rout over the Mexican international side. What were the highlights for this particular game? Leading off the scoring in the 6th minute, Lindsey Horan gets a nice header from Carly Lloyd and slots home a sweet volley into the bottom left-hand corner of the net. Do yourself a favor, go watch the goal if you've got a minute. Then just a couple minutes later, Carly Lloyd in the 11th minute gets a cross from Christen Press on the left-hand side and heads it in and gives her classic celebration doing this. I love it when Carly Lloyd does that. But next up, we had an own goal. But first, the build-up to it was Tobin Heath feeds Christen Press through a strike off the post. So basically, Tobin Heath gets the ball from Christen Press, nails a scorcher with her left foot. It is tipped by the Mexican keeper, flashes off the post, then Christen Press is there for the rebound. However, it hits off of a Mexican defender first and goes into goal, so an own goal was awarded in that case. But just fast forward 2 minutes later, Sam Mewis gets a steal, passes it off to Tobin Heath, who nestles it into the bottom left-hand corner of the net. And for the remainder of the game, that's about all she wrote. The game ended in a 4-0 win, and no other scoring ensued after that. So all the excitement came in the first half, and the second half overall was pretty dry, I will say. Who all played in this particular game? So starting in goal, we had Alyssa Nair. Then in the right back spot was Kelly O'Hara, followed by Abby Dahl-Kemper and Becky Sauerbrunn in central defense. Then on the left-hand side of defense was Crystal Dunn. Then in the midfield, we had Lindsey Horan again playing in the central defensive midfield position, or the 6th spot, I should say, for an injured Julie Ertz, who wasn't really cited this game. She was sitting up in the booth with the remainder of the reserves for this one. Then we also had Rose Lavelle and Sam Mewis in the central midfield. And then up top in the left wing, we had Christen Press on the left, Tobin Heath on the right wing, and then Carly Lloyd starting up top in the striking position. So probably one of the stronger lineups I'd see. This is probably really, really close to what we're going to get for the game against Sweden leading up to the Olympics. There are probably going to be a couple of changes here and there. If Julie Ertz is healthy enough, I'm guessing she'll be starting in the 6th spot. However, I'm really curious to see what the front line is going to look like. I have a feeling it's going to be Megan Rapinoe on the left wing, Alex Morgan in the striking position, and Christen Press on the right wing. But with how well Tobin Heath is playing, Vlatko's got some stuff to think about. So I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out. However, getting into my overall thoughts of the game, I had a lot of different thoughts of this game, honestly, and it being the match before the Olympics, I guess it sort of makes sense. We'll start off here. I actually really got to hand it to Mexico. Out of all the opponents that the U.S. has had this year, they probably put up the best fight, or at least one of the best fights, or most competitive games in this particular series. A lot of times they would play well in the first half for both of these send-off series games, but then they would falter in the second half. I don't know if they ran out of gas or what, but in the second half, it was just a lot more quiet on their side of the equation, which it happens all the time. Another thought I had, I noticed that the U.S.'s high press hasn't been quite as prolific as it's been in other games earlier on in the year. Like going all the way back to the Netherlands game, which was actually technically in 2020. I believe it was in December, if I'm not mistaken. The U.S. was aggressively high pressing all the time. Like they would smother their opponents. And I think they've kind of become smarter about when they choose to press or how they choose to press, because I mean, with only 18 players in the roster, you kind of have to be a little bit smarter because you can't gas everybody out, right? You can't run out of gas really, really quickly. And then plus, when you're playing so many games in such a short amount of time, you can't afford to be run and gun all the time. So I'm glad that they're being a little bit smarter with their high press. But rumor has it that 22 players are going to be allowed into the rosters for the Olympics, but I'll talk about that in the next main topic. So something to keep in mind. I like the smart change. I think it's tactical, and I think it makes a ton of sense. Another thing that's sort of been on my mind, Christen Press has continued to play like the goddess that she has been. She was robbed this game. I guess I'm going to give a little anecdote here. The goal where that was disallowed earlier in the game, there was great buildup from the back all the way from Alyssa Nair. 6 or 7 laser passes were made consecutively, and then it ended with Christen Press slotting home a goal. However, the head official blew her whistle and ruled it offside, which, if you look back at the replay, she wasn't offside. She's probably on by 2 or 3 yards, and I feel bad for Christen Press because it really robbed her of a goal. And when you have referees that are officiating teams of this quality at the international stage, I guess the refereeing quality just has to be better. And it's kind of disappointing that it wasn't. I'm not going to be too harsh on referees because as a former referee myself, I get it. It's a really tough job. But at that stage, it's just got to be better. But that's my little side note from that. On the more positive side of things, Christen Press, I think she keeps continuing to prove that she should be the first name on the team sheet by and large. And it's going to be the case for the Olympics because she's just playing out of her mind. If her goal wasn't disallowed, or if the own goal that she had wasn't ruled an own goal, it would have been 36 of 30 of the last 38 games where she either scored or assisted for the U.S., which is absolutely insane and out of this world. So good on Christen Press for all of that. Next up, that was on my mind, Lindsey Horan continues to excel in the 6th spot for the injured Julie Ertz. Like I said earlier, Julie Ertz was up in the booth for this game, hanging out with the reserves. She's probably not quite ready to play yet, which is a little surprising to me, but maybe they're just being cautious with her. She could be ready to play, but maybe they just don't want to rush it too much. However, having said that, Lindsey Horan has done an excellent job filling into that spot. She has struck the perfect balance between the defensive side of the ball and the attacking side of the ball. I noticed that a lot of times when she would go and attack, it would be very strategically and it wouldn't be all the time, which is very hard for a central attacking midfielder because that's in their nature, right? And for her to kind of toil it back a little bit and still be able to pick out the right moments to go and score, just like she did in the 6th minute, that shows a lot of poise and it shows a lot of growth in her game. And then plus on the flip side, she's been defending really well too, and she's been controlling the midfield. A lot of the build-up and play came from Lindsey Horan patiently bringing the ball forward and passing to the appropriate spots and filling in defense whenever the fullbacks got forward. So really good on Lindsey Horan. If Julie Ertz, for whatever reason, can't make a go for the Olympics, or at least very often, I have no doubt Lindsey Horan's going to crush it. So good job, Lindsey. Next up, I noticed that Emily Sonnet was subbed in for Lindsey Horan in the 6th spot. And once again, I would say Emily Sonnet looks pretty comfortable in that 6th spot. Did she excel in it? No, not quite, but I think she actually plays quite well in that spot for not really natively being accustomed to it. So again, another side note that if Lindsey Horan can't play in that 6th spot, Emily Sonnet is there for that as well. A couple of other thoughts I had for this particular game. Carly Lloyd has continued to play pretty well, I'd say, by and large. If I'm not mistaken, I believe she is either leading the team in assists or she's in second in the team in assists for 2021. She's become an assist machine and been really, really effective in the striking position. And it's really fun to watch her growth and development in her career from being a central midfielder by trade to slowly transitioning higher and higher up the pitch. She transitioned to a central attacking midfielder. Now you could argue that she's somewhere between central attacking midfielder and striker, probably more of a center forward type position, because she's a really good facilitator of the ball, much like Alex Morgan has become over the years as well. So it's really cool to see Carly Lloyd be in that position. So overall for this game, it's got me really, really pumped going forward for the Olympic send-off series. I'm excited to see what the U.S. is going to do for this first game against Sweden. I would argue that Sweden is probably going to be their toughest opponent in the entire tournament, or at least until they get to the knockout stages, the quarterfinals, the semis, the finals, if they get there, etc. Crossing our fingers, and I'm hoping they play well. And a lot of the evidence from these games has shown that they are very well coached and they're very well prepared to get to these games and perform well, aside from corners, which could still use a bit of improvement, but that's a whole nother story altogether. Not every part of their game is going to be perfect, but they've gotten pretty darn close to it thus far. So, ladies and gentlemen, their next game is going to be in the Olympics. It's going to be July 21st. It's going to be a really early one for those of you who want to watch it live. It's going to be at 4:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for those who are curious. I believe it's probably going to be on Fox FS1 most likely because they usually hold the rights for these major tournaments. So if you're going to wake up early to watch it, enjoy it. I'll probably have to watch a replay. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, are you excited for the Olympics? Or what did you think of the U.S. Women's National Team versus Mexico game? Any crazy predictions for the Olympics? Whatever you think, feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know whatever your thoughts are. All right, friends, so up next on the docket, a report came out from the Associated Press on June 30th of 2021. So I apologize, I'm getting to you guys this news a little bit late, but I want to break it down for you all. The IOC voted to change the roster size from 18 players to 22 players for the Olympic competition this summer. So basically, what does it really all mean? What it really means is I'm going to explain this to you in a before and after scenario sort of situation, and also give an example to kind of hammer it home. So before the IOC approved this rule change, each Olympic roster was only allowed 18 players with 4 alternates. Hypothetically speaking, if one of those 18 players got injured at all during any of the competitions within the Olympics, the applicable coaches could, in fact, take out that injured player from the 18 and swap it with an alternate of their choosing. However, once that change was made, the injured player could no longer play for the rest of the Olympic competition. However, what about after the rule change now? So with the rule change, the roster has expanded from 18 to 22 players. How is this different from before? Basically, for example, in this case, you're still only allowed to pick 18 players for your game day roster. However, hypothetically speaking, if one of those 18 players was injured in competition, all they'd have to do is sit out for as long as they would like, and they could be replaced by one of the other 4 players that was in the roster. However, rather than having that injured player not be able to play in the rest of the Olympic competition, they could still play in maybe a game or 2 later with no problems and no issues. So, for example, say Lindsey Horan got hurt in the Olympics at some point. Say game 1, she gets hurt against Sweden. I'll knock on wood just to be sure that doesn't happen, but say she gets injured in the first game. Basically, what could happen is Vlatko could say, okay, for the next game, I'm going to have Lindsey Horan sit out, but I'm going to bring in Katarina Macario as one of my 18 players. So in the second game, Katarina Macario plays instead of Lindsey Horan. However, in the game after Katarina Macario plays, Coach Vlatko can say, okay, Katarina Macario, I'm going to send her back into the reserves, and then I'm going to bring in Lindsey Horan back into the game. Previously, he wouldn't be able to do that. He would have to send Lindsey Horan away for the remainder of the competition, but now he doesn't have to worry about that. So it's a really good win-win situation for Vlatko and the rest of the U.S. Women's National Team as well. So just to outline specifics, I'm going to link the article down in the description below just so you guys can read it for yourself. But here are my overall thoughts on the rule. I think it's an absolute stellar move by the IOC in general. Since football has started back up again post-pandemic, or I can't say post-pandemic because it's still going on, but you get what I'm talking about. Since the pandemic has started and players have returned to football full strength, there's been a lot more injuries in football in general across all men's and women's leagues, basically. And for the IOC to alleviate some of that stress, I think it's smart. It makes a lot of sense because for the most competitive competitions and most exciting competitions possible, you can't have a ton of players getting hurt because then it lowers the quality of the competition. So why not make it a little bit easier on teams and alleviate the stress a little bit more? Coaches who have advocated for this, the Netherlands coach Serena Wegman has been on board with it, and obviously Coach Vlatko Andonovski has also been on board with it as well. It's all in the article that I linked down in the description. And as a U.S. Women's National Team fan, I'm really pumped for it because it only increases the depth of the roster that the U.S. is bringing. So a little biased in that respect, but still overall, I think there's something for every team and every team fan to really love in this rule change overall. One thing I do want to bring up, I know this rule change might beg the question, oh, so now since it's expanded to 22 players, will Vlatko take in different alternates than he did before? And I want to point out it's kind of a moot point at this point because this rule wasn't actually approved until after all of the teams had to submit their full rosters. So even if Vlatko wanted to change up who he took to the Olympics, he couldn't have because the roster is already submitted. And this rule change wasn't approved till after all the rosters were submitted, so he couldn't make the change anyway. So that's my thoughts on it, ladies and gentlemen. But I want to know, what do you think of the rule change? Whatever you think, feel free to comment below and let me know whatever your thoughts are. All right, my friends, so for the last main topic for today's episode, we're going to jump over to the WSL just for a second and talk about Manchester United. So the Manchester United women's squad have approached the PFA for guidance surrounding their current situation between the players and the club For those of you who don't know, so Colin M. Dames wrote this particular article. I'll link it down in the description below so you guys can read it. But essentially, the players have expressed really great concern over the lack of the club's ability to, one, communicate with the players, also providing adequate training facilities for them to train in, and also hiring of a new manager to replace Casey Stoney, who left some months ago. For those of you who don't remember that, I made a couple videos about that. You can find them on my channel at your leisure. But the club's only answer for that as of late has been just to keep the interim manager, Casey Stoney's assistant, which is Martin Ho. Overall, the club's staff are said to have been backing the players for the approach to the PFA, so I'm really curious to see how that's going to turn out. But on the other side of the coin, a lot of players have been leaving this offseason too, and no others have really been signed by the club. So Christen Press has left, Tobin Heath's left, Jess Sigsworth has left, Amy Turner's left, and now Lauren James has also been linked with a move to exit the club as well. So a lot of concerns with the players overall, and honestly, I really don't blame them. My overall thoughts on the situation, and I guess this is me speaking more of a fan of the entire Manchester United Football Club, that's men's, women's, youth's, reserve sides. Overall, I feel really bad for the Manchester United women's players, of course, because this really sucks, because not having the adequate training facilities to even do your job, or not having a coach to even be able to play for, that's got to be really damning for the motivation as a player, because it just shows that the club doesn't care as much as they should. So from an overarching perspective, I'm just really disappointed with that situation. And honestly, the Glazer family, for those of you who don't know, are the owners of the Manchester United Football Club. And it sucks to say this, but I'm not really surprised that the Manchester United women's players are having problems with the Glazer family not providing them the things that they need, because the Glazer family has a reputation for doing that on all accounts for all of the different squads within the club, which is just really disappointing to hear. For those of you who don't know, and this is just me speaking very loosely, I'm not like super close to the situation, but this is just from a fan's perspective, from the outside looking in. That's my disclaimer for this. Essentially what it looks like is the Glazer family has historically been the owner of clubs for the purpose of just making money. Now, I know that might sound a little bit naive and a little bit odd, but the thing is, when you own a sports team, a lot of times they want to see their team succeed. They want to see their teams grow. With the Glazer family, what it looks like is they're just there to funnel as much money out of each of the clubs that they own as much as possible. And the problem is when your goal is to make money, just exclusively make money out of clubs, you inevitably lower the quality of the club itself by just siphoning money out of it. The less money that the club has, the fewer training facilities that they have, the lower quality of training facilities that they have, the less people that they can hire, the less players they can sign. And it really takes the quality out of the club. And then before you know it, the club is just left with no money and in worse shape off than when the ownership group took over, which is a really big shame to really see all unfold. And for those of you who are curious about the current situation in Manchester United in general, I mean, it got so bad that fans even stormed the pitch at Old Trafford a couple months ago, which was a really weird situation overall together. But you get where I'm coming from. Fans are fed up with it, and now it's trickling to not just the men's side of the equation, but the women's side of the club as well. And what makes it really concerning for the women's club is the fact that it's kind of easy to sort of start linking between a lot of the injuries that the players for the Manchester United Women's Club has had over the last season with the lack of adequate training facilities that they provide. I mean, Tobin Heath has sustained 2 major injuries while playing for Manchester United. She was only there for a season. Christen Press got knocked like 3 or 4 times and was out for a few periods of several weeks. Lauren James was hurt quite a bit. Leah Golton, who's one of the best wingers in the league, she got hurt quite a bit. The injury list just kept piling on and on. Can't even run the club because all of the players are getting hurt. And I have to think that the lack of training facilities that the club provides these players has something to do with it. Now, of course, that's just me as a fan speculating, but it gets really tempted to start putting those arrows together and drawing lines and drawing conclusions when the club just simply isn't getting the money that it needs to grow and succeed. So it begs a lot of interesting questions with the Manchester United club in general. And like I said earlier, I am very upset for the Manchester United women's players, and I'm disappointed in the Glazers, but at the same time, I'm not surprised because this seems to be the Glazer family's MO. So one thing I kind of want to mention when it comes to owners coming into different countries and trying to buy football clubs. So for example, like with the Glazer family coming into England and the PFA being the organization in charge. Now, some of this might come off a little ignorant because I'm not super in tune with how this process works, but stay with me. The concepts still kind of remain true. I think it's in the PFA's interest to really heavily screen and approve new owners who are trying to come into any of the English football leagues, for a few reasons, because of the fact that they need to find the motivation as to why the owners want to own a club. Is it for the money? Is it for the love of the club? Is it to grow the team and make money at the same time? Because you can have your cake and eat it too. Both of those things are possible at once. And the reason why the PFA, it's in their best interest to really screen these owners coming in is, like I said earlier, if owners are just coming in for funds, just to siphon money out of the club, it's going to lower the overall quality, not only of the team, but if it happens often enough, it's going to lower the overall quality of the leagues that they're residing in, because of the fact that they're siphoning money out of the clubs. And like I said, when you have less money for the club, you don't get the proper facilities that you need. Players start getting hurt. You can't sign new players. You can't sign assistants, coaches, what have you. And then the club's just left with nothing but a skeleton, and it lowers the quality of the team, and then thereby it lowers the quality of the league. And if the quality of the league is lowered, less fans are going to be willing to watch, and less money is going to be made overall for the PFA to go around. So why not just stomp it out at the very beginning of the process and more heavily screen the owners that come in to these leagues? So like I said, that might be more of an ignorant viewpoint of viewing it, because I don't know the exact process for new owners coming into English football. But like I said, concepts remain the same, so something's got to be done. It's got to be better. That's just my overall thoughts on the situation, friends, but I want to know what you think. What do you make of the situation? Feel free to comment below and let me know whatever your thoughts are. All right, friends, so that will do it for another episode of Women's Soccer World. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. If you like what you're hearing and seeing, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome content and to join in on the fun. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce. Until the very next time, have a great day.